Good evening. Hi, my name's Carl, and we are here at Horizon Solutions tonight with a significant size group of people. We'll call it that. Thank you for coming. Logan, I'm a little hot in the room for thank you. So I'm Carl. Welcome to Horizon Solutions, and welcome to our Resource Stage seminar for January the 10th, 2023. Tonight we are talking about theatrical lighting console fundamentals. And over the years, we've had lots and lots of different seminars where we've talked about theatrical lighting and how theatrical lighting works and that sort of thing. But we thought, we need to talk a little bit about the fundamentals of how theatrical lighting control works. And instead of just talking about a specific lighting control console, there are so many different control consoles out there today, it seemed like it made a lot of sense to talk about the general concepts and how they fit into different things. And then if there's any specific questions about things, I can try to answer some stuff, but we'll see. There's a lot of different ones out there. I was thinking about this, and I was thinking that maybe I should start off with, and I didn't get around to doing it today, but I was thinking I should show off the picture of the first car that I ever learned how to drive. And the first car I learned how to drive was my parents' Dodge Shadow, and it was this red Dodge Shadow car, and I don't know, I think my dad bought it because he was commuting from Guelph area to Mississauga, and it was a small car. But the front of that car looked almost exactly the same as the car that I got into when I bought my first car, which was a Chevy Sprint, in that, the gas thing, the gas gauge, it was over here, and the speedometer was over here, and there was a tack. I don't know why there was a tack. Neither one of those cars were standard. But a lot of the things are the same, right? And it doesn't matter which car you get into. Within reason, a lot of the things are the same spot. Unless, of course, you're driving a Tesla. But for the most part, a lot of those concepts are the same. In the 90s, there was that catchphrase, paradigm. And, they would build things around a paradigm, right? In control consoles, in lighting control consoles, we have that same thing. We've got the fundamentals, the things that you're always going to find certain things on a lighting control console. It doesn't really matter if you're talking about a physical console like this, where you've got physical faders, or it is software. The software often is emulating what the fader looks like, because they want you to feel comfortable with these same concepts as you're moving from one manufacturer or one software developer to another software developer. So to start with, I think we need to talk a little bit about how lighting control works. And to start with how does lighting control works, I think that we're going to talk a little bit about where did we come from. So, if you walk into your living room and you have a rotary knob on the wall or a slider on the wall to adjust the lighting intensity in that room, then that is a small dimmer of some sort. Some of the smarter sort of systems out there, smart home sort of a thing, you might be controlling a remote box somewhere. This is a picture from a 1940s theater, and this is kind of interesting. It's got those big rheostat dimmers on the wall. We actually have one of those here. We're pretty careful about actually pulling it out because it's very dangerous, and you could seriously hurt yourself. But this is one of those dimmers where one of these light theatrical control systems where it had big switches, like the kind of thing that you almost expect somebody to be, bringing Frankenstein to life or something when they flip that switch, right? And then the big rheostat dimmers where, depending on where that handle is, that would be the intensity of the dimming that would be taking place. This sort of system actually still exists in some really old theaters, but for the most part, they're gone. But the idea is that each one of these would control a certain amount of power that's being sent somewhere else. Now, the first theatrical lighting control systems that I worked on were analog lighting control consoles. So there would be power coming into the console, and then each one of the faders, as you brought that up or down, then it would send a voltage, a DC voltage through that fader, and depending on where you had the fader, then that amount of resistance would then send a control signal to the dimmer pack. Okay? That's how it worked when I first started. Now, granted, that was an older system that we were using with this traveling theater group I was with, but that was a thing, which meant that every single fader had to have one wire going. Now, the systems we're talking about here were 24 channels. So that meant 24 channels plus common wires going out to each individual dimmer. At that time, big theater shows and big touring concerts would have had big, huge bundles of cables. And again, each individual wire would be controlled by one of these faders, and each one of these faders would then be controlling the analog amount of electricity going down to tell the dimmer what to do. We used to, you look at that sort of system, and it was one dimmer per circuit controlled. Okay, so each individual one. And you could plug multiple lights into that dimmer depending on what the breaker was and depending on what the rating was on that dimmer. But you could plug multiple fixtures into that, and then as you controlled it, then they would go up and down together. Okay, it's pretty simple. Fine for rock and roll, okay for a certain level of theater depending on how many you needed, and as long as you were careful about how you dealt with things. So back in the 70s, largest theatrical lighting manufacturer in the world at the time was Strand. And Strand started to develop a way of taking an analog signal and multiplexing that. So like early digital, not really digital, but kind of digital. And at that time, they came up with this control protocol called AMX. And believe it or not, we still actually run into AMX occasionally. Sometimes in some old school systems, even around London, we'll run into an older system that's running AMX. And the 192 stands for the number of channels that you could control with one wire or one cable. And that cable had 4 pins. So it looked like a XLR cable, like a microphone cable, but it had 4 pins. And this AMX control would allow you to control that 192 channels. It was okay. It was a little flaky. It didn't always work 100%. And over time, the electronics would get not so great, and it wouldn't stand up very well. Don't worry, this history lesson's going somewhere. In 1986, USITT, which is the United States Institute of Theater Technology, which is the big brother to CITT in Canada. We have the Canadian Institute of Theater Technologies. USITT adopted the DMX standard, which later became referred to as DMX 512. And this is a digital multiplex. So if AMX was an analog multiplex, this is the digital multiplex. DMX is the standard that is used for sending control signals to theatrical lighting and concert lighting all around the world. Even when we are using networked control systems and we are using things, signals referred to as ArtNet or streaming ACN or some of the other types of control signals over network, they are still conforming to DMX standards. And they're still using the DMX format for how they're sending things. So even if we're going from a console like this one that can send out ArtNet or streaming ACN, and it's going to another device that's using ArtNet or streaming ACN, it's still using the standards of DMX over Ethernet. Okay? All right. So why is this important, and how does DMX work? Do any of you know much about DMX? No. All right, great. Okay. Good. Okay, so DMX as a protocol is one cable. So if I unplug this right here, this is a DMX cable. It is a 5-pin XLR cable, so it looks like a microphone cable, only has 5 pins. If you shove that into your microphone, it's not going to work so well. Well, this is the male end, so it's really not going to work so well. But if you try to plug it into your amplifier or mixer, it's not going to work. DMX has 512 channels of information being sent at one time. Okay? One cable with 5 pins, 512 channels of information being sent. And it's being sent somewhere in the area, depending on how you've got things set up, somewhere between 30 and 40, 45 times per second. Okay? And in those 512 channels of information, each channel holds a value between 0 and 100%. Okay, following what I'm saying? So you have channel 1. Channel 1 is going to have a value between 0 and 100%. Channel 2 is going to have a value between 0 and 100%. Okay? Pretty simple so far. This is a computer technology. It is actually a type of serial transport. So if that means anything to you. And because that's the case, it's actually not 0 to 100%. We talk about it always that it's 0 to 100%. It's actually 0 to 255. Or if you're a computer person, it's 256 steps. 0 is a step. 255 is a step. You've got 256 steps. Okay? Also often referred to as 8-bit. Okay? So each channel, you have 512 channels. Each channel has a value between 0 and 255. Is this making sense so far? Everybody in the room is nodding. So everybody on YouTube, I hope you're nodding as well. All right. So as I said, 256 steps. Okay. So let's take a look at this for a quick second. This should make sense, I think. 0% is a 0 DMX value. Okay. So it could be channel 1, it could be channel 200, doesn't really matter. 0% is the same as 0 value. 50% is 128. Does that make sense? Okay. There is a reason why we're going to talk about this. Don't worry, it's coming. Might be a little while, but we're going to get there. 100 is 256. Wait a minute. No, it's not. It's 255. That was a typo. Okay. All right. So, control console channels versus DMX channels. So let's talk about this for a second. In the old days, as I said, in an analog console, channel 1 was channel 1 on the dimmer. When I brought up channel 1 on my console, it was physically wired to the dimmer that was dimmer number 1. When I brought up the channel on my console that was 3, number 3 would come up. 9, number 9 would come up. It was one console channel to one output channel, or one dimmer channel. Okay? Because DMX is a control signal that is a computer control signal, and we're playing with computers here, I can start routing things. I can start matrixing things kind of however I want. Okay? So now I have this ability to do this thing called soft patch. Let's take a look at this picture. So this was, if I understand it correctly, built in 1966. And the picture, I took this from a controlbooth.com post. And my understanding is that this was still in operation within the last 5 to 10 years. And I can tell you that there are schools in the Thames Valley District School Board in London, Ontario that still have this kind of thing. It is kind of dangerous. And the idea is that you have dimmer channels and then you have your circuits up in your theater. Okay? And so the idea is you've got all these dimmers and you've got them, all the power, you're taking the power from those dimmers and you're plugging them together. It's kind of like if you have a power bar and you take a bunch of lights and you start plugging them into the same power bar and they're all in the same circuit now. Well, this is the same sort of an idea. Now I'm taking different circuits from around the building and I'm plugging them into the different dimmers I have available. This is a hard patch. A hard patch, that physical plugging in. The same idea if you walk over to a receptacle in the wall and I plug one thing into the top receptacle, one thing in the bottom receptacle, unless it's a split receptacle, it is on the same circuit. Okay? Same sort of idea. I'm just plugging things together. If we look at control for lighting, my console channels and my DMX output channels that are controlling my dimmers, okay, in a what's referred to as a one-to-one patch, my control console channels and my DMX channels are exactly the same. 1 is 1, 2 is 2, 3 is 3. If you're an audio guy, then often a lot of audio people will say, my life's going to be a lot easier if Number 1 going into my snake is number 1 on my console. Number 2 in my snake, number 2 in my console, that kind of thing, right? But we all know in the digital world, or even in the analog world, if I'm looking at my snake in here, that I can plug things however I want. That's a physical patch. In my digital console, I can start messing around with it too, right? Well, hate to break it to you, but the lighting guys were doing this a long time before the audio guys were. A long time before the audio guys were. And so we can use soft patch to start mixing things around, start doing things a little bit differently. Okay? So, all right, enough talking and just looking at slides for a second. Let's start looking at how this actually fits onto a console. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is, Mark, are you able to bring up the camera on the console here? Look at that. Okay, so this console here is a console called the ChamSys QuickQ30. So I usually refer to this as the ChamSys, but I've been told many, many times by the manufacturer rep that I'm saying it wrong. So it's the ChamSys QuickQ30, and this console has a lot of different output options and will do a lot of interesting things. We figured that this was a good console tonight to be able to show because there's a couple of interesting things that it did. But most of what we're talking about tonight, you can do on wide variety of consoles. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is right now the console is completely blank and it doesn't know anything. It has DMX outputs, but nothing's going to happen. I can push up all of these faders and nothing happens on the other end. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to tell the console that this fader right here is going to be my first channel. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go with patch. I used that term already, patch. And I'm going to say, well, I'm going to hit the plus button. I'm going to patch a dimmer. And I'm going to tell it that it's going to go to universe 1. That's an interesting concept. Universe 1. One universe is 512 DMX channels. This console has 4 universes. Okay? We'll come back to that. All right, so right here, my starting address, okay, my console address is going to be number 1. My starting DMX address is going to be 1, okay? And I actually have 3 lights over here, so I'm going to tell it to patch all 3 lights at the same time. This is a very common concept to be able to do this, to say I'm going to start by patching here, I'm going to start it at DMX address 1. Okay, I hit patch. Now I have generic dimmers 1, 2, and 3, and they are patched as 1-001, 1-002, 1-003. That 1 in the beginning is which universe I'm patching to. Okay, so I can see here that these have lit up. Oh, you can see here that I've got them lit up. As I bring up this fader, I've got that control. Okay, and if I bring it to 50%, then that light is at 50%. If I bring up the next one here, I've got this other Fresnel, got control over it, and this fixture here I've got control over. Okay, so I patched 3 lights into DMX address 1, 2, and 3. Okay, we're good so far? Okay, Vadim, I am going to move into an area we haven't talked about me moving to. So over here, we have a dimmer pack on the floor, and this is what these 3 fixtures are plugged into. This dimmer pack, can you see that there? Can you see that, Ross? Yep. So it says D001 on it. Okay? That means that that dimmer pack is going to pay attention to DMX starting at 001. So the console is sending out 512 channels of information all at the same time on universe 1, on that one cable. That dimmer is paying attention to 001, 002, 003, and 004. It is a 4-channel dimmer pack. Does that make sense? Okay. we're a small group tonight, so I'm going to try a couple of experiment things. That'll be kind of fun. I'm going to put channel 1 at 100%, channel 2 at 50%, and channel 3 down to 10%-ish. Okay? Oh, it's hardly even on. There. Maybe more like 25. Okay? Can you see that? All right. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to change the DMX address on this to 002. Did you see what just happened? Did you catch that? I'm going to go back. So it's on 001. Now I'm going to switch it to 002. You see what just happened? I'll tell you what just happened, in case you missed it. When it's at 001, this channel, this dimmer channel, is paying attention to 001, this one 002, this one 003. As soon as I change this to 001 as the, or 002 as the starting address, 2 is the starting address for this. Now this fixture is number 2, this one's number 3, and this one's number 4. Does that make sense? All right. Now I'm going to go back so that we don't mess ourselves up. So here's a crazy thing. DMX is dumb. It is a one-way communication. It sends out information. The console has no idea what I just did over there at the dimmer. Doesn't care. All it's saying is, I'm outputting just like you told me to output, and I don't care what, you know. If you don't work properly on the other end, that's your own fault. The console is doing what you've told it to do. If I'm sending out 512 channels of information on that one output, what would happen if I take another dimmer and I address that other dimmer as 001? What happens? They would both respond the same way. Exactly. They're going to do exactly the same thing. They just, yep, don't worry, the universe won't explode or anything like that. They just do exactly the same thing. And if I offset them, then I can do that. In fact, 4-channel dimmer packs like that are not always that useful when we're using a 500, or sorry, when we're using 15 amp circuits, because usually if you're putting 3 500 or 600 watt channels, loads, lights on each dimmer, then we're more than what you can get on 15 amps. So often we'll start the second dimmer pack at 004, even though 004 is actually that 4th dimmer channel. We're not using it, so we can overlap them. Sorry if that just confused people. I'm sorry, but you can overlap things, and it doesn't know the difference. Okay. All right. So, first concept is this idea of channel control. All right? And so this idea of channel control, meaning that if I push up a fader, then that's what my lights are going to do. Each individual light, I'm just pushing up the fader and the light is going to change. That seems great if you have a show with 6 lights. Right? As soon as you get into a show that has more than 6 lights, well, okay, it's good if you have a show with 10 lights, right? Past that, now then maybe you need to find yourself a ruler. Or maybe you need to find yourself something else to be able to start changing how lights work. And if things get more complicated, then, well, how do you deal with that? Okay? So that's the next thing to talk about. Because I can create a scene like this, and then I can maybe adjust the scene based on what's happening like this, and adjust it again, but eventually I'm going to run into a spot where I can't control things the way I need to. Okay? First thing I can do is I can look at my lights and say, well, you know what? These 2 lights are the same kind of light. These 2 lights are Fresnels. That's a French name for a French lighting manufacturer, no. Guru, no. Lens guy. I think that's what it comes down to. He was a lens guy. The type of lens that's used in a Fresnel is the same type of lens that is used on a, anybody? Oh, maybe. Yeah. I was going to say on a lighthouse. The lensing that's used on a lighthouse is a Fresnel lens, and that has to do with boy, this has nothing to do with control. But a Fresnel lens, the idea is that it's actually a larger piece of glass that's been cut multiple times and squashed, or at least that's the concept, so that you can have a much thinner piece of glass that will give you the same sort of effect as a thicker piece of glass. That's why it has those ridges in it, or when you're looking at it front on, it looks like rings. Okay, really good for lighthouses where they need to have concentrated light. Okay, anyway, those are Fresnel fixtures, very classic Fresnel fixtures actually. And because they're actually the same kind of fixture, I can go into here and I can say I am going to group those fixtures together. So the console has actually already created some groups, but I don't like the way they've grouped them, so I'm going to create my own. And I'm going to say, well, I'm going to go back to my fixtures and say fixture 1 and 2, which it already has selected because they're in green. I'm going to go to groups and say action. Not action. Record. And now I'm going to record a group, and it asks me what kind of group, what do I want to call it? I'm going to say Fresnel's. All right, and now I have a group called Fresnel's, and so now anytime I select Fresnel's and I use my encoder over here and bring them up, then now I can bring up and down Fresnel's together. And the other thing I can do, I'm going to bring them all the way down. I can also, on this console, I can go to groups, and it's actually, has it put it over here? Yep, there it is. So this is my, one thing you'll find with theatrical lighting consoles that are digital consoles is that things like faders change based on what you're trying to do on the console. So I just went from fixtures, if you can see that, from fixtures control to group control. So my group control on 3 is those 2 Fresnel's together. Audio guys? A little bit? All right. So if you're an audio guy, kind of like a Submaster. More like a VCA or a DCA, but kind of like that. Okay? So the idea that you're grabbing multiple channels and you're controlling them at the same time. All right? So that is a group. And let's say you're in a large production with a lot of lights, and you're saying, I want to grab all of my lights that are coming from stage left. All those lights that are coming from stage left, I want to make those into a group. All my ones coming from stage right, into a group. All of my blue top lights, that's a group. Red top lights, different group. Orange top lights, another group. I can select all of my top lights together, another group. There's nothing in lighting control console world that says you can't have groups that are using the same fixtures. Okay, so a fixture can appear in multiple groups, if that makes sense. So I could have a group that is all my front light, I can have a group that is all my warm front light, and a group that is all my cool front light. Does that make sense? All right, great. So that's groups. Channels, individual controls. Okay. Groups is a matter of controlling those channels. But there's no level between them. They're all the same. They're equal. When I grab a group, all of those fixtures will respond equally. Okay, if I bring up the intensity on that group, they're all coming up the same. So, enter the next concept. This one has a lot of different names. This one, for whatever reason, depends on the manufacturer. They have a tendency to use different terminology. Sometimes it's preset, sometimes it's playback, sometimes it's scene, sometimes it's submaster. And on this console, they tend to call it a cue, which makes no sense whatsoever to me because a cue is something else. But that's what they do. I don't know. Okay, I don't know what to tell you, actually. Okay, so let's take a look at that and see what that looks like. I'm going to, in my fader mode, I'm going to switch back to fixtures over here. And I'm now going to control these, and I'm going to set a look. I'm going to say, well, you know what? That is a fantastic look. That looks really, really great. I'm sure that it's going to be awesome. So I'm going to go to record now. And now I can record that as a playback. And I'm going to do that down here on this console. In different consoles, they do it different ways. And there's actually a couple of different ways we can do it on this console. But for today, for simplicity, I'm just going to put it down on one of these playbacks. I'm going to put it into number 6. By just clicking there, then it automatically goes into number 6, and it calls it Q6. Because again, for whatever reason, this console calls those Qs. Now, I'm going to bring these faders down. And you remember exactly what those intensities were, right? Sort of, kind of. It's not a magic trick. If I bring it up, then those lights will come up in those intensities. So I now have a scene or a playback that is using the look that I saved. Pretty simple, right? It's proportional. At 100%, the lights are at 100% of the intensity that I recorded it at. If I bring it down to 50%, it is 50% of the intensity that it was recorded at. Make sense? All right. 100%, 50%, 25%, it's always going to be proportional. So this is great because now I have a bunch of fixtures, I have a bunch of groups, and I can create looks really quickly because I can now say, all right, I want all my blue lights, I'm going to put them up, and then I'm going to grab all of my red lights, I'm going to put them up, I'm going to have them at different intensities. Those are my different groups. Now I save them as a playback, as a submaster, and ta-da, there we go. Again, super simple. Bring up this, bring up this, bring up this. Record, there. Bring those down, and now I have another one, another look. Okay? You see the speed that it's responding at? See how it's kind of slow and theatrical and how it does that? The console is set that way. It's just set with a default fade for these cues or for these playbacks. You can set that yourself. So we can change that so that the fade up and the fade down is 0, and then it just snaps up based on how fast I move the fader. Or you can set it so that it has a time. That again is a concept that is used on many theatrical lighting consoles depending on what it is you're doing. So you can often change that fade time to be what you want it to be.
On different presets, you can set different fade times?
Yeah, that's right. So yes, so Ross, your question of on different presets, different fade times. So to give you an idea, hopefully I do this correctly. If I go to action on this console, then I go to fade times. Then when I select that one, I can see the fade time here, the default, if you can read it there. Yeah, there you go. The default is 3 seconds. If I want to make that to be 0 seconds, close, set fade time. Now when I bring that up and down, then it just responds very quickly. And that's different than this one that is moving nice and slow again. Okay? All right. How about if I want 2 at the same time? I can do that. And as I bring one, oops, yeah, there we go. Okay. See what's happening there though? This one, I bring it up, bring that down. The 2 things are going up and down, and as one goes up, then the other one, fills in where the differences are. And when I bring the other one down, it replaces it with the other pieces. It's not adding on top, it's replacing it. This is a concept in lighting called highest takes precedence, or sometimes referred to as HTP. So the idea is that whatever the highest value is for any of those channels, that's what we're going to leave the lights at. So for instance, if I'm going to bring this down. If I bring channel number 2 all the way up on my channels, my individual channel controls, and then I bring up my cue number 6, the other lights will come up, but the highest value for channel 2 is still at 100%. If I bring channel 2 down, it'll fade a little bit until it gets to the point. Oh, this console is holding it until it gets to 0, and then it'll release it to here. And there's probably a way to change that on this console, because there usually is. Okay? Cool? All right. So we have channels, we have groups, and we have preset control. Good so far? Okay. I don't know if you've noticed so far, if we take a look at my PowerPoint here, some of the background pictures I've selected here are just individual things kind of sort of showing different lights, right? This one I like. This one here is a picture from Stratford's production of Chicago from this year. And I don't know if any of you saw it. It was a spectacle, and there was a lot going on. And so I sent a note today to Mick McDonald, who Mick is a great guy, and he is he would be referred to as the head electrician, the head of lighting for the Stratford Festival Theatre. And sent him a note, and I said, hey, Mick, I'm working on this presentation for tonight, and I just had a quick question for you. How many channels of control did you have for Chicago this year? And I actually said, well, how many cues did you have? And he said, well, this and that, and I think this and this and that. And it basically came down to, he figured that, and he said, I don't have my computer in front of me with the information, so that's totally fine. He said between 650 and 700 cues. And he figures that there was, what did I say earlier, guys? 7,000 channels? 7 or 8,000 channels of DMX. That's a lot, right? And we're going to talk about for a second how you get to that number, how you get that many. But the idea is that you're no longer using your fingers to go through and push up this fader and bring down this fader. When you have 7,000 channels, you have to have another way of going about it. Okay? This console will not do 7,000 channels. This console will do about 2,000 channels. Still a lot, right? So let's talk about that for a second. How would we do that? Well, it's this idea of cue lists. This idea that I want to be able to build a list of my entire show, and maybe the very first look is walk-in. What's the room, what's the theater, what's the church, what's the school going to look like when you walk into the room? Often your walk-in look. And then you might have, as you're getting closer to the showtime, you might have a house to half look. And then you might have a house to 1/4 look, and then a house out, and then your opening look. And each of those, as you're going through, usually you're not touching any of the faders at all. Usually you're hitting this guy right here, your playback button or your go button. Okay, so let's talk about what that looks like. I'm going to build the simplest cue list ever. First, I'm going to start with channel 1 at 100%. Okay, channel 1 at 100%, I'm going to go record. On this console, in the mode that we're running it in right now, channel 1, 2 is dedicated as the theater cue list. So I'm going to go ahead and just click on that, and it automatically says recorded cue 1, playback 1, theater stack. I can change the name of that if I'd like, but for today, that's enough. That'll get us going. My cue number 2 is going to be equally as exciting as cue number 1, and I'm going to go record. I'm going to click on that again. It says now recorded cue 2.00, and cue number 3, record into there. Okay? I'm going to bring that down, and now I'm going to take a look at my cue stack or my cue list. So if I bring this up, and then I go playback, go, then my first cue plays, and let's see if we can see this on here. Can we see this on here? Yes, kind of, sort of. You can see that number 1 is highlighted. Do you see how it's a little bit different color? Number 1 there. Okay. And now if I hit play again, Then it should be fading into number 2. And I hit play again, and it fades into number 3. Okay. Now, that is a pretty simple cue list. You can make this as complicated as you want or as simple as you want. I can now go through and I can say, all right, well, that's cool. I got that working. So now let's go into here, and I'm going to say fade times. And I can go into my fade times and adjust my fade times for my cue list. Okay. I can also do things like, what if I want to put a cue between 2 different cues? And I'm saying this, and now I'm realizing that I don't remember the last time I did this on this console, so I should probably back away really quick here, but it's all right. So I'm going to make a cue. I'm going to go ahead and I am going to get out of that cue. Oh, that's not where I want to go. I can bring that down. I am going to create another cue, which is these lights just like this. And I'm going to say record. And I'm going to click there. And it says cue number 4 on playback 1. Now, let's see if I can recall how to do this. Am I doing something? No, there we go. So I can now go to cue number 4. And if I hold down on cue number 4, I can change that, and I want to make it 3.5. What do you think is going to happen when I make it 3.5? Oh, wait, 3.5 is useless. How about we make it 2.5? 2.5 is much more exciting. And release. And so it moves that in between those 2 cues. Do you see that? Okay, so now I can create a cue stack, and I can insert other cues in between things. Does that make sense? I can also, if I hold down on this, if I hold down on this, then I can change cues so that they are wait on go, so I have to hit the go button, or it will follow on the previous cue, so a cue will go through, and then the next cue will go automatically. Okay, or wait for a certain amount of seconds before the cue goes. So that means a cue will fade up, and then there will be a wait time. It could be a second, it could be 30 seconds, it could be 120 seconds, and then the next cue will go. So you can kind of do some automation in how your cues run. Does that make sense? All right. These concepts are in every single theatrical console out there. They just might be slightly different this way or that. Okay? All right. So that is, in its most simplistic form, a theater stack or a theater cue list. All right? Have I lost anybody yet? We're good so far. Pretty simple. All right. So now comes the big question. So far, I've been talking about dimmers, but a lot of us don't use dimmers for things much anymore, right? It's not the kind of thing that we get as excited about. We still have dimmers for different things. Sometimes it's just for your house lights. Sometimes it's for other things. I can tell you that we have to drag in a dimmer so that we can plug in some fixtures because everything else in this room is LED. So it's worthwhile. We got to talk about LED works, how LED works. But understanding how DMX works in relation to dimmers helps us understand how DMX works related to everything else. Okay? All right. So I'm going to go out here again, and we're going to take a look at a red, green, blue LED fixture. Now, this is not a fixture we typically sell. This fixture is actually kind of a piece of junk. It's not something we would normally get into. It's a fixture that's an older style where the red, the green, and the blue are separated, and they create weird rainbow colors when you try to put it on something. And it's a little funny. But I put this picture in here because I wanted to make it very, very obvious what this fixture is doing to create light. All of the red LEDs are ganged together. All of the green LEDs are ganged together, and all of the blue LEDs are ganged together. Okay? So because of that, how many DMX channels does it take to control a red, green, blue fixture? This is the audio guy in the back said 10. Ironically, I'm sure there's a joke there about audio guys and counting to count how far they can count, but that's another story. Anyway, all right. So red, green, blue would be a 3-channel fixture, right? I'm going to patch this fixture down here, which is a little bit more complicated than just red, green, blue, but this is going to, I think this will work just fine for what we're doing. So we're going to go to patch again to where we were before, and I am going to go to add, and I'm going to just do this with dimmers because I want to show you how this breaks down. And this fixture is actually red, green, blue, and amber. So we see that a lot more with LED fixtures these days where they throw in another color, amber. So I'm going to go ahead and patch this one, and this one is on, I think this one is, it's on Universe 3, correct? I'm going to say no, it's on Universe 2. It is on Universe 2. And I'm going to say that it is starting at 400. And, oh, no, it's not. It's starting at 450. Just can't read my own writing. 450. And I'm going to say we have a quantity of 4 because we have red, green, blue, and amber. Okay? Close patch. All right. So now channel 4 is going to control nothing. Huh. Did I patch that to the wrong address? It is definitely on Universe 2. It is definitely on Universe 2. I say definitely, but now I'm questioning that. Mark, does that sound right to you, Universe 2? It's
either 2 or 3.
Well, yeah, it is. You know what? It might be 3. Okay, so bear with us for a second, please. Let's just try that and see. 450. Nope. It is DMX address 450, right? Oh, we had this working earlier. Well, did the power on? Oh, that's because the power is unplugged. There we go. Let's try that again. Wow, it's real happy now. Hey, there we go. All right. So the first channel is red, green, blue, and amber. Okay? Kind of as you expect. Pretty simple. So that's fine, except that a couple of things. One, if I want to pick a color, well, now I have to kind of do this to sort of kind of get the color that I'm looking for, right? If you caught what we were just saying in between there, this is starting at channel 450. So we've addressed this fixture to start paying attention to, of those 512 channels that it's getting, we've asked it to start paying attention to channel 450. So it's saying 450 is red, 451 is green, 452 is blue, 453 is amber. Okay? I'm going over that a lot because that is actually one of the most misunderstood things about lighting control. Is a lot of times people get stuff plugged in and they don't understand how it's actually working. They just think, well, it's working, and the lights are on, and I push up the fader and then something happens, and they don't understand why. That's pretty important. All right, so we got that working, and we can look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's as if we have 4 different fixtures that are controlling that one light. Kind of inefficient. Not the best way of doing things. Every theatrical lighting console out there outputs DMX. How you are able to manipulate that DMX is all about whether you might want, or is the whole story as to why you might want to buy one control console over another. It is essentially that user interface. Is that user interface going to work for you if you're going this way or that way? Which one is going to be better for you? Okay? And that's really the whole story about why you might want to buy one console over another. And one console might allow you to get into more nuance than another one for different types of things. So let's try to see what we can do if we repatch this fixture and tell it, instead of telling it that it's 4 dimmers, we tell it that it's actually an LED fixture. See how things change. So I'm going to go into patch, and I'm going to go and delete those 4 fixtures that we created. Okay, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to add a new fixture, and I think what I'm going to do, let's see if we can make this happen. If I go all the way, if I go to generic, nope. I had this earlier. Oh, that's because I have to get rid of that word. So let's go to generic here. And I'm going to look for red, green, blue, amber. See that? Can you read that there? So it's a generic fixture with red, green, blue, amber. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick that one. My starting address again is for my universe is 2. Oh, I have to type that again. And I have 1 fixture. This time I have 1 fixture, and that fixture has how many channels? 4 channels. Okay? So I have 1 fixture, and I'm going to go ahead and click patch. So now it comes up in my patch as 1 fixture. So now it's just channel number 4. So when I bring up channel number 4, oh look, there is that fixture, but it's coming up, it's bringing up everything together. Red, green, blue, and amber are all coming up together to create this kind of white, kind of not so white color. So I'm going to go back out here, and I'm going to say grab that 1 light, which it's already selected because I've pushed up the intensity. Now on the console, I have some other options. If I click on color, now I can go in here and I can move around this and select which color I want to grab. And what's cool about this console, and I like a lot when I'm trying to show people how things work, is do you see how I'm moving it around? See how when I'm moving it around, it's actually showing me what the DMX values are for each of those channels. Are you catching that? Right? Red, green, blue, amber, right there. I'm pointing over there. I should be pointing over here. Red, green, blue, amber, right there. As I'm going into different spots, you can see that, well, when I go over here, it's got the blue and the amber in it a lot. I can also, so that's my color picker. Okay. I can also use these chips along the top and just click on red, amber, yellow, green, and do things that way. Is that cool? All right. If we take a look at this fixture beside the not so great one. This is an ETC Celador Desire D60 wash fixture. That is a mouthful. It often just goes by Desire 60 or D60. That fixture is not a red, green, blue fixture or a red, green, blue, amber fixture. That one has 7 different colors in it. It has 7 different colors because this isn't an LED discussion tonight, but it has 7 different colors because what ETC is saying is that you need 7 different colors to be able to properly cover the color spectrum with LED. They actually have fixtures now today, we don't have one in here tonight, but that have 8 colors. So 8 different colors to produce a white that will actually look like a tungsten lamp. That's the theory. Okay? But when you're color mixing, now you're having to mix all of those different colors. This idea in patch, Mark, can we switch back to the patch for a second? If we go back to patch here, and let's say I was just going to patch another random fixture, you can see the different manufacturers here. So if I go to ETC, I've got all of these different fixtures. These different fixtures are referred to as fixture profiles. A fixture profile is essentially telling the console which DMX channels are used for which things. So let's say a manufacturer decided that they weren't going to have red, green, blue, amber. They were going to have red, green, amber, blue. The console won't know what to do with that unless it knows that those things are separated in that order. Those files are called library files sometimes, or fixture profile files. Okay? And the most common problem with a theatrical fixture like an LED fixture, and when it's not working and it's not lining up, is that the profile is wrong. Usually the profile has to be taken a look at. The problem is that sometimes people patch the wrong profile, and sometimes manufacturers are building profiles and they don't have the ability to have the fixture in front of them, so they're going off of the fixture breakdown in a manual, and they don't necessarily know for sure that that's what it is. They have to base it on what they see in the manual. Does that make sense? All right, great. Okay, let's patch a couple of other fixtures in the room and see how that works out. So we have ETC. I'm going to actually just type it in here because it's faster. Color source. You have to spell it right or it doesn't work. Okay, color source par, 5-channel. They are in DMX Universe 3. They have a starting address of 221, and we have 6 of those. And I'm going to hit enter, and now these 6 fixtures are coming up. And I can go to here, and I can go to color, and I can go to there, and I can select a color, and now I've got control over all those lights. And I can quickly change those and move them to wherever I want them to be. Cool? So let's go back to a concept we already talked about tonight, and we can say, well, I want to have a group of just the color source pars. And this console is smart. It actually already created that group for me. So that's my group of color source pars right there. So now I can actually bring these all down. I'm going to hit this button clear. I can bring all those down. Whenever I click on that, now I can bring up the dimmer and bring up those fixtures. It's kind of interesting, right? So now I can go to color, and I can adjust these however I want with those fixtures. Let's try something a little bit different. I'm going to clear that, and let's go back to fixtures. And now I'm going to say I want every other color source fixture. And I'm going to say, I want to record that into a new group, and I'm going to call that group CSP, I'll say dot even. Okay? And then I'm going to create another one. Record group. I'm going to call this one color source par dot odd. And now when I want to select, hit clear again. When I want to select the even ones, I can click on there, go to color, pick a color. Oh, I should actually pick an intensity. Should bring up the intensity on them. And then I can go back to here and I can select the other ones and now go to color and make those ones this color. Oh, once again, don't forget the intensity, Carl. So I can quickly go back and forth and say, oh, all right, let's do these ones, color, there. So I can grab them individually, I can grab them all together as one big group, or I can grab them the odd and even. Okay? So it's a way to grab a group of fixtures, a bunch of them, and do them all at the same time. I can grab all of them at the same time, go like this. Okay? So that is RGB or RGBA fixtures. These fixtures are actually doing things slightly different. These fixtures, if we looked at the fixture profile, they have intensity, red, green, blue, and then strobe. So I have the ability to strobe them. So the fixture profile is set up to know how the DMX breaks down. Okay? Everything else we talked about, as far as saving playbacks, saving cue stacks, all those other things, I can do exactly the same things with red, green, blue fixtures. I can do exactly the same things with LEDs. I just record them into those same looks. Make sense? All right. I'm going to put something just a little bit out of order tonight from what I was thinking about actually doing it as. And that is, let's talk about palettes for a second. So if I go to my fixtures, I've got them all grabbed there, and I go to color, and you can see all of these at the top. These are color palettes. I can also go through here and say, well, Roscoe is a world-class manufacturer of lighting gel, lighting filters for putting in front of a theatrical fixture. This is their fixture, or this is their color library, and I can click on this, and within some level of reason, it will try to emulate that color. Okay? Now, I've got these doing something funky right now because I've selected them. Oops. Huh. That's really interesting. There we go. And I can go through and I can select these colors based on the palette, and it will change those to kind of try to emulate that color. Okay. In the same way, I can actually use these color pickers at the top, and I can have colors that are quick and easy to jump between. That sort of concept is a color palette. Okay? So that takes us to this next piece, which is, what about moving lights? Okay? So let's take a look at this, which is one of the most basic moving lights around. Okay? Super, super, super simple. Because all this is as a moving light, is it just, oops, don't move that while it's on. It is a pan tilt head. Okay? If I unplug it here, I can pan left and right, and I can pan up and down. Okay? And when I do this, then it makes noise. Just a small amount of noise. Well, I'm going to, actually, yeah, I'll leave those down. So I'm going to now go ahead and patch that. And in my patch, I am going to call that, the manufacturer calls that a IQ, Roscoe IQ. And I'm going to change the address on that. Can't be, and it's not even in the programmer. There we go. And the channel count is great. Okay, so 101 on universe 1. So now, when I take a look at that fixture, and that is on number 11, I can move that back and forth and up and down. Okay? How is it doing that? Two DMX channels. It's got one channel that's controlling pan and one channel that's controlling tilt. Okay? I can patch the exact same thing on two faders if I want to. One fader does pan, one fader does tilt. And it just moves back and forth. So 50% or 128 would be right here. And 255 will be over here. And 0 will be over here. That kind of a thing. It's just DMX channels. So they've taken those same DMX channel concepts and they've applied them to pan and tilt. Now, this is where things get a little heady for a second. Remember I said earlier on, 256 steps, 8-bit. What happens when we need higher resolution than 8-bit? The next natural step would be to go to 16-bit. 16-bit in the theatrical lighting world, what it does is that between 0 and 1, we now put another DMX channel in. So now, between 0 and 1, I now have 0 for DMX channel 1, DMX channel 2, which is my higher resolution channel, goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all the way up to 256. Then when it gets to channel 1, at 1, it goes all the way back to 0 again. Then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So your resolution is now 256 times 256. Okay? And where this is important, it doesn't matter so much in a little room like this if all we're trying to do is move this mirror around and we're just going to try to move it around and pick up a couple little spots. But what happens if you're trying to have a light go across an arena? And the difference between here and here means I now can't pick up the lead singer. I have to be able to go between here and here, which means I have to just be able to just a hair over. Because if I'm throwing 100 feet with my fixture, then I need to be able to just a hair over. Does that make sense? All right. If you don't understand the two channels overlapping like that, don't worry about it. All you need to know is that 16-bit means that you have that much more resolution to be able to be very careful about what's going on between two things. Some manufacturers get super, super excited and they say, we're going to give you 16-bit control over color. It's like, okay, that's great, but 256 steps for my red is actually not so bad, right? Sometimes it's just people like to get excited and they like to be able to say, look at us, we've got more widgets or whatever. And that doesn't necessarily have a huge impact on how a lot of people program things. So let's talk about palettes here for a second. Let's say right now I don't have this light plugged in right now, but let's say I was going to take this light and I was going to move it so that it is pointed, I would say that's kind of downstage. You can see that light would be pointing right down here. Okay? So I can actually go into record. Hopefully you can see this okay. Yeah, it looks pretty good. And I could say, well, that's actually my far down look. Okay? Far down. You can call it something else if you want to. Now I'm going to move it, and I'm going to say this is going to stage left. Okay? We're all on the same page. This is stage left, right? Okay, cool. All right, good. Okay, so we're going to say stage left, so I'm going to say that one is left. Okay? So now when I click on far down, it moves to there. When I click on this one, it goes to left. And you go, well, that's fine, Carl, but I like moving it with my finger. And I say, yes, that's fine until you have 2 or 4 or 24. And you need to have way more control. Let's try something different here. I am now going to clear this, get rid of that for a second. I'm going to go to patch. And now I'm going to go to plus. And let's try something different. I'm going to type in SGM. SGM spelled like that, right? And then I'm going to say I'm going to put those into universe 3, and I've got one of them, and it starts at 300. Everybody hear that? Okay, so now I'm going to add a second one, and that's in universe 3, and the address for that one is 340. And I have one of those. There we go. And we noticed something tonight, that when somebody who will go unnamed hung these lights, they may have made a mistake and flipped one upside down. So let's see what we got here. So I have 2 lights the back of the room, if you can see them there, and I am going to bring those. I have fine on, thank you. Okay, so now I have tilt on this fixture, on these 2 lights together. Okay, and over here I have pan. You see what I'm doing there? Okay. And if I go into beam, then now I have zoom. So I can zoom the fixture, and I have focus. There we go. That's what I'm looking for right there. Okay? And let's say I just wanted to grab one of the fixtures. I could go back and go to fixtures themselves, because I'm grabbing multiple things here. Just grab one of them, go back to position, and let's bring that. Wow, now I remember why I had fan on. Okay, so that goes to that one. Then I want to go back, grab the second light, and position. And now let's bring this guy. Bring that down. Okay. Select the two lights, and I am going to record that, and I'll call that center. Okay, and let's just quickly, we'll record another position that is nice and high up here. Here we go. We'll highlight our fulcrum speaker in the ceiling, and we will record that, and we'll call that far up. So now, when I hit center, the lights come to me. When I click on far up, they go up to here. That is a position palette. So we were playing around with color palettes with the LED fixtures, playing around with position palettes for moving lights. I can also use colors on this fixture as well. Okay? And I go position, and I can go center, and then I can, oh my goodness, I keep telling everybody, don't do green on people. So it's fast to be able to take a fixture that has, how many channels does this fixture have? 32? 33 channels. 33 channels of DMX, and I can quickly make that fixture do what I want if I use palettes. Because palettes are building blocks. Palettes are the ability for me to be able to take a bunch of things and make it really, really fast. Because one of the things that is true in all forms of lighting today is that nobody has enough time to do what they really want to do. Nobody does. It doesn't matter what show you're talking about. Everybody could, in lighting, usually says, I wish I had another hour. I wish I had a little bit more time. I wish I had more fixtures. But I wish I had a little bit more time to be able to create something. Okay? So, that is, in a real nutshell, really quick nutshell, that is how these different things work. Okay, so I have individual channel control, which works great for dimmers or basic stuff. And then I have groups, and I have submasters or presets or whatever you want to call those. Then I have a cue list, and I can take this look and build it into a cue list. Blue, center, intensity, 100%. That becomes a cue. Okay? And then I can go through and I can build my shows based on those. I'm going to throw in a really interesting little twist to this that I think you might find interesting. And we got a couple minutes. If I am building a show and I'm using palettes to build that show. So let's say I say this palette that I'm using right now with those moving lights is on center with a dark blue color palette. Okay? And if I save that as a cue or as a submaster, and the lights are not at DMX values, this pan, this amount of pan, this amount of tilt, instead it's at center. If I change the value of the preset palette, of the palette center, then everything that recalls using center gets updated. In programming terms, that's a variable. So I'm changing the variable. The palette that I'm calling up is center. Now if I change what center is, then it's going to recall it in a different spot. Where this is important is, let's say I create a theatrical performance that is touring. And one night, that light is right there. But the next light, that light is right there. Well, if I don't change it, then all of my cues are offset just this far. Right? So if I can go back and change my palette of what center is, all of my cues will call back center. And I can just make some minor adjustments to what center is. So, Ross, you guys have this really cool new lighting system over at Met. And if the adapters ever show up, then you'll have a couple of these IQs, right? And there'll be a couple of IQs that you can use for moving things around. Well, if you're putting together a program for one of the performances, and you program the entire thing that the MC position is going to be right here, and you set the preset position for MC or for guest speaker or whatever to be right here, but at the last minute, that position moves to here, you can make one adjustment and all of your cues follow through with that. You don't have to go through each cue and make a change. You can just move that. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's awesome. It's really, really great because now you're building with pieces. Okay? It's building blocks. It's a palette. It's the idea that you're going to pick this and you're going to change it. Okay? All right. One more thing, and that is other DMX stuff. This is a new fog machine from Ultratech that was just released a little while ago. Ultratech is a theatrical and an event and entertainment system effects company. They happen to be one of the world leaders when it comes to fog machines and hazers and bubble machines and all kinds of weird machines when it comes to effects. They do all kinds of cool stuff. And they happen to be located at what is that name of the street? No, it's in London. They're in Hyde Park. They are up there somewhere, and I knew it up until about 3 seconds ago. They're up in Hyde Park area by the big Walmart. World renowned. Anyway, their fog machines can all be controlled by DMX. Blue Herring Drive. There we go. I knew it would come back in a second. But their fog machines and many of their other machines can be controlled by DMX. And so if you said, I want lots of fog, okay, well, that's lots of fog. I want a little bit of fog, a little bit of fog. Okay? It's just taking that DMX control signal and saying, okay, how are we going to apply that DMX control signal to what volume it's going to be? Okay? The same concept works for lots of different things. We have mirror ball motors that are controlled by DMX. We have irises that are controlled by DMX. So inside the light, it changes the size of how much light is being passed through by DMX. What color the lights are here is based on where the wheel is for changing DMX. What gobo is up? We haven't even talked about gobo with these moving lights because it's not really a moving light conversation this evening. But if I change the gobo here on these lights, I don't know if you can see that in that color, but you can see how the gobo has changed, right? If I change that, that position is controlled by DMX. Sorry, I went the wrong way. Okay? That is, DMX is telling it what channel to make that, or what value that channel should be at in the channel that is assigned to the gobo wheel. Okay? All right. We've covered a bunch of different things. There is a ton more that we could cover, but this is a really good place to start for the fundamentals of theatrical lighting control. Has anybody got any questions?
So in one cue,
In one cue, yes.
you can set all of your lights,
Yes.
and within that cue, you can tell it that you want smoke as well,
Yeah.
and then move on to the next scene.
Right. So, in case anybody on streaming couldn't hear that, she probably couldn't. In one cue, it's like a snapshot of everything that's happening on the console. So that one cue can control all of those different things. Anything that's being controlled by DMX can be controlled with that. Now, I mentioned earlier on about the show Chicago in Stratford. That show actually ran 2 concurrent cue lists that ran at the same time. And one cue list was running all of the regular lights, and one cue list was running, I think it was running all of the LED, all the moving lights and all of the pixels. So if you know that show at all, they use white bulbs to write words and do lots of flashing and moving and all that kind of stuff. That is being run with one cue list, and all the other fixtures are being run on another cue list. And that console's quite sophisticated. And with one go button, it can run both cue lists at the same time. Sometimes that kind of thing is done because the programming is done at different times, and sometimes that sort of thing is done because you may have multiple programmers working on the show at the same time because of the sheer amount of information that's needing to be able to be put into the console at once. So in that kind of system, you can actually have multiple people working with different consoles or with computers on the same network, and they are all building on the same show file. Yeah, there's a lot you can do. Okay? All right. Well, thanks for coming tonight. And if you're online and you've got any questions, then please let us know and we will try to answer those. This is, as I said earlier on, the ChamSys QuickQ30. We also have some other consoles out there tonight, sitting out, including an old Leprechaun console, which will not do everything this one does, but does some other basic things. Right through to a console that we have here that actually was the console that was running the Tom Patterson tent last summer, or the summer before last summer before last. And all of these consoles will do everything that we talked about tonight, and lots more, depending on what it is that you're trying to do. If you've got any questions about consoles or any of the lighting stuff that we're talking about, please let us know, and we'll try to help. And a lot of people think of Horizon as an audio company, and we are very much an audio company, have been for over 40 years, but we also do a lot of lighting. Next month, in February, we will be back with another Resource Stage seminar, and that seminar we will be talking about the fundamentals of digital audio mixers. So we will be talking not just about one specific digital audio console. We will have a couple of different consoles, and in a similar sort of format as to what we're talking about tonight, we'll be looking at different things that follow through on different consoles. And I think we're going to be sticking mostly to Allen Heath consoles for this one, because there's a lot of things that follow through, and we will be comparing a Q console, so one of the least expensive digital consoles out there today, right up through to an Avantis console, which is pretty awesome. So hope to see you then. That is the second Tuesday in February, and that will be, oh, hold on a second. Excuse me, folks at the back. Can you please confirm for me, are we actually doing Resource Stage on the second Tuesday of the month? Because something tells me that we're not. What is the second Tuesday of February? We are not doing Resource Stage on February the 14th because we don't want anybody to get in trouble. So we are actually moving Resource Stage to the third Tuesday of the month. Glad I remembered that. The third Tuesday of the month in February, we will be here on the 21st. Okay? All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us online. Thank you folks for coming in this evening, and have a great night.